Hi, everyone.
Hello again. We're going to look at two proverbs which seem to form the basis of Ray's analysis of the possibility of friendship within Jehovah's Witnesses circles. And those proverbs are Proverbs 17 verse 17 and Proverbs 18:24. So I'm going to read them from the New World Translation.
A true companion is loving all the time, and is a brother that is born for when there is distress. There exist companions disposed to break one another to pieces, but there exists a friend sticking closer than a brother.
Again, Proverbs 17:17 and 18:24, in case you want to look them up. And then Ray says about whether this can actually happen among Jehovah's Witnesses. There is a saying that any organization is nothing more than the length and shadow of the man or men who are at its head and control it. Does the Watchtower organization itself, then, act as a true friend in the way advocated in its own comments quoted earlier? Or does it call for a loyalty from its members that it itself does not give? Does it show itself friendly and loyal only or primarily to those who can give it support, time, money, effort, and submission to its views and policies, giving it that which increases its size and strength and influence? Does it show itself warm to and speak in praise of those who do this in large measure, giving much, but cool to those who do it in lesser measure, subtly implying that it expected more from them? Does it love those who are moved to speak out in telling the truth to it in a corrective manner? Or does it view itself as above receiving correction from anyone but itself or God, angrily labeling those who express reproof as enemies, not only of itself, but enemies of God? Does it avoid being overly inquisitive? And here he's using the words from the magazine article about friendship. Does it avoid being overly inquisitive, personal, or possessive toward members? Or does it rather assume the right to insert itself in virtually every aspect of their life, advancing its own dogmatic opinions as to how they should conduct a large portion of their personal affairs, how they should spend their time, what they should read, what employment is acceptable, what attitude they should take as to their children's education, to what extent members should interest themselves in persons outside the organization's own area of control, how far they should go in extending charity to such ones, and, in a host of other ways, show itself as overly personal and possessive. Does it merely offer its opinions as simply opinions, or does it instead persistently advance these opinions while simultaneously implying that failure to accept them demonstrates a lack of respect?
Would not one find that kind of friendship on a personal, individual level something oppressive? Yet whereas many would not tolerate this imposition of standards from an individual, they will accept it from a system. The individual witness members' knowledge of the organization's standpoint cannot but color the quality of his own friendship with any fellow member. The possessive spirit expressed by the organization cannot help but severely limit the extent and strength of that relationship, creating a climate in which the unselfish, courageous, and self-sacrificing loyalty of genuine friendship is at risk.
Generally, when one who has spent much of his or her life in the witness organization comes to the conclusion that its claims of exclusively having God's favor are not solidly based, this results in a sense of distress, a period of crisis marked by an intense struggle between the appeal for organizational loyalty and the voice of conscience. At such a time, one normally turns to close friends for help or counsel or added strength. One of the great blessings of true friendship is precisely that sense of freedom to open up on things of deep concern, knowing that while the friend may not agree, he or she will listen and give honest consideration to one's reasons and especially one's motivation. In the spiritual paradise, however, any frank expression of a different viewpoint, no matter how conscientious, almost automatically brings a cloud of suspicion, winds of rumors begin blowing. The test of whether one's friends are fair weather friends or not, or how loyal they will prove themselves, regardless of the trialsome or difficult conditions or the heart-searching circumstances that may develop, to use the Watchtower's expressions, now begins. Though not always, the results are usually disillusioning. Whether the observation one makes is true or not is rarely given consideration, for the one spoken to may not even take the time or thought necessary to consider whether there is validity in it. The lengthened shadow of the organizational leadership looms over the friendship and almost automatically has a chilling effect.
All too often, when one goes through a crisis situation that causes loss of organizational favor, the reaction is, using the words the Watchtower employs of false friends, don't get involved. Some have said, I don't know the details and I prefer not to know. Others, learning of adverse action by a judicial committee, have said, I don't know the circumstances, but the individual must have been in the wrong, or the organization would not have taken the action it did. Thus the person is presumed guilty of wrong, without any hearing of the evidence. I know personally of a number of long-term friendships with both parties, where both parties saw the same fallacies and organizational wrongs and felt free to discuss them in private conversation. When one of the parties came under organizational scrutiny, however, the other, perhaps with a degree of embarrassment and with assurances that my respect for you hasn't changed and you'll still be my friend, nonetheless, in effect, said that circumstances made it necessary to cease communication and association. As the Watchtower's quotation of the elderly woman's comment puts it, they love, but at a distance, in contrast to a friend sticking closer than a brother in time of crisis. Yeah.
We're linking to two videos that Ray generated in our first series from Crisis of Conscience. Mm-hmm. One about Peter Gregerson, who had himself disassociated after years of being a leader in the congregation that Ray was now associated with when he had to move out of New York Bethel. Peter Gregerson disassociated himself. So there's a video up about that, his disassociation and the effect that had on family and friends and the way they treated him. Mm-hmm. And then a second video from the same series on Crisis of Conscience where Ray Franz discusses that he was DF'd, not for apostasy, but rather for associating with Peter Gregerson and having a meal with him. Unbelievable, but
his
true.
Employer.
Next time, Ray takes up a parallel in another cult which has very similar, or used to have very similar teachings to the Watchtower, and that is the Worldwide Church of God.